Hello and welcome to this series about how you can treat trichotillomania, hair pulling, or skin picking disorder. A lot of people have both. So if you have both, you both pick your skin until you get problems with scars and bleeding, or you pick your hair, you pull your hair until you get bald spots and it becomes a problem. This can be the treatment for you. These two disorders are up to 3% of the population. That means in almost every classroom there will be one person with the problem. The problem with both hair pulling and skin picking is that you feel extremely crazy for doing it. Especially people who eat the scabs that they pick or eat the hairs. Actually, eating hair can be very dangerous, so if you do that you should go to a doctor and get your stomach checked. Eating scabs from your skin is not so dangerous, but it feels very strange that you do it. And some people, they pick on their animals, on their pets, and some pick on their spouses and children. Some pull the hairs of their spouses and children. And this makes people seem very strange. In a way, people blame themselves for being totally crazy. They want to stop with this, but it is very difficult to stop on your own. This is the typical kind of psychological problem that is difficult to stop on your own if you're really deep into it. So this series is about how you can do that. First of all, it's important to know how common it is, that it's like one person for every classroom, basically. In academic settings there are even more. When you sit and read for university and things like that, it's very easy to start picking your skin or pulling your hair more. There are not many treatments that work for this. In a way, medication is usually not effective. So what you have to do is the psychological treatment that I'm going to talk about now. First of all, it's important to become aware of what you're doing. A lot of people, they pull their hair or pick their skin almost automatically. So one of the ways of becoming aware is to write down on a piece of paper every part of the body that you either pull hair from or pick skin from. Write it down in the smallest detail. Then you can write down the situations where you pick or pull. This can be very good in the first step of the treatment, where you're going to try to limit the situations, limit the triggers that makes you pull. Okay, so write down every situation that you pull in. For instance, a lot of people, they pull in front of the mirror in the bathroom if the light is good. If the light is very low, they won't pull. So a mirror is often a trigger. A lot of people, they pull or pick when they're sitting in a car, when they're bored. Another trigger is stress. If you have a lot to do, if you have a lot of homework, if you have projects that have to be finished, you know that this is the time when you pull or pick. Other people do it in low stimulus situations. That means, for instance, when you're sitting and watching videos, watching TV, and especially if you sit on the side of the couch so that you can lean your hand and pull or pull or pick, as we say. So make a list over all the situations where you do this. Now in the first session, that's all you're going to do. In addition to understanding the principle of what you're going to do with this, is that you're going to do two things. You're going to limit the triggers. See, I have a tendency to pick at everything myself. So it's a relatively normal behavior that all animals and all humans have. It's just that for some people it becomes too much. So, oops. Camera fell down here. Okay, so the thing that you're going to learn to do, and which is very simple, but when people do it, it really works well. That is to take your thumb and hold it inside your hand like this, whenever you feel the urge to pull or pick. Not very hard, but like a caring way of saying, I take care of myself by wrapping my fingers around my thumb. This is what we call habit reversal. Instead of picking or pulling, the moment you feel the urge, you're not going to try to resist. Your only mission is to hold your fingers like this for at least 1 minute or until the urge goes down. That's all. And of course you realize that if you do that, you will be able to you can't pull or you can't pick as long as you hold your thumbs. So if every time you feel the urge, your only mission, you become single-minded in holding your finger like this, and you do it as soon as you can so it becomes a reflex, you have very big chances of getting rid of this problem. Okay, that was the first lesson. So write down all the situations where you pick or pull. And whenever you feel the urge to pick or pull, try to learn to do this, holding the thumb. Okay, welcome to the second session in treatment for hair pulling and skin picking. Since the previous session, you are supposed to have written down all the situations where you pick or pull, all the triggers that you have. It can be bright light in front of the mirror, it can be sitting watching TV, being able to have my hand on the side of the sofa so that I can pick or pull. It can be stress, it can be feelings of worthlessness, it can be a lot to do, it can be boredom, driving a car for instance. So what you're going to try to start from now on is to limit these situations where you pick or pull. For instance, if you sit by the side of the sofa doing this, sit in the middle of the sofa so that you can't lean your hands. That's a very easy thing to do. If it's light and mirrors, which is very typical for both skin pickers and hair pullers, turn down the light, take away mirrors. A lot of people have got help from just taking away their mirrors. Ask somebody to be with you in the bathroom if you are the kind of person who doesn't pick or pull in front of other people. Being together with other people as much as you can would be a very good idea. Putting up notes to yourself, it's not worth it, I have better things to use my time for, I choose a better life, or reminders that you are working on this can be very good. So this is what we call stimulus control. So from now on, in as many situations as you can, you limit the triggers or you remind yourself, or a third category is that you can find something to occupy your hands, like pens that you can fiddle with are great. Any kind of handy work with your hands is a great thing. It also leads to a lot of pleasure. Some people can go out running a little bit when they get the urge. So this is what we call stimulus control. So you can take care of the triggers in many ways by just limiting the triggers. For instance, if you know you are going to be stressed because you have a big assignment to hand in, okay, maybe you could even put on some light gloves that would prevent both picking and pulling. Okay, that would be a way of limiting the standard triggers, because often you get triggered by feeling and then you see a good spot here and you just have to take it. Or you feel the hair that's a little bit different and you have to do it. So that's one thing that you can do, is the stimulus control. Limit the triggers and do other things with your hands. Okay. Now the other part of the treatment of the more technical treatment is is habit reversal. That means that every time you want to pick or pull, you're going to do a different action, and you're going to do it as quickly as possible so that your brain learns this. It learns a new link that whenever you feel the urge to pick or pull, you do this. You hold your thumb. Very gently, nothing cramped about it. It's nothing that you have to do. You make a choice. You take care of yourself. You just take in the thumbs like this. You take care of yourself, and you do this as soon as you can, and you hold it for at least a minute. Some people even put on their mobile phone to ring after a minute just to get super attention to what they are actually doing, that now they're really working on this. This might seem like a stupid, silly little thing to do, but we've seen repeatedly that people who do this, they are able to complete the treatment, and they're almost pulling and picking free at the end of these 10 sessions. Okay, so limit the stimulus that you have, the triggers, and whenever you feel triggered, instead of picking or pulling, do this. And in addition to that, I want you to write down as much as you can about the picking or pulling. What do you think or feel before you do it, and what you think or feel after you do it. A lot of people will say that I'm stressed before I do it. It gives a very small relief, and then I feel bad afterwards. So when you've written down this, you become much more aware of it, and then you have a possibility of doing something with it, especially of taking different choices, so that you can you get the motivation for taking different choices when you see how bad it makes you feel. Okay, now we're ready for the third session about skin picking and hair pulling. And this session can be very important because it will help you to clarify for yourself the motivation, why you're doing this. In this instance, it can be important to look at what the skin picking or hair pulling has prevented you from doing. A lot of people have problems with social relationships because of this. They use a lot of time on the pulling and picking. They use a lot of time to cover it up. There are a lot of activities they can't do, like swimming, sunbathing, going on pajama parties and things like that, because they're afraid that others are going to discover that they have this problem. So, in this session, you should list all the things that the pulling or picking has prevented you from doing, and then reformulate it into a value of what you want to achieve by stopping. For instance, I can have a romantic relationship if I stop. I can become a mother if I stop, because I can have a romantic relationship. I can have normal relationships with my friends if I stop. The reason for this is that motivation is everything in this. If you are really motivated positively for stopping pulling or picking, and you have the techniques that you didn't have before, your chances for success are much bigger. So the work you're going to do now, in addition to continuing to notice when you're pulling, you can keep a diary of how many hairs you pull every day, of how many places you pick every day, and how much time you use for both of these activities, and also the urge. We're going to come back to the urge later. Anyway, the urge is not the same as the behavior of pulling. And this can illustrate a little bit the value perspective. If somebody tells you, I'm going to shoot your dog or shoot your child if you pick a hair now in front of me, or if you pick on your skin, of course nobody is going to do it. They will be able to suppress the behavior totally if the value is strong enough. if they say, I'm going to give you a cookie if you don't pull your hair the whole day, of course, that's not going to make a big difference. But if they say, I'm going to kill your dog or your child or you, if you have the urge to pull or the urge to pick your skin, of course, you've lost it once. You can't control that. But the behavior you can control. And the more you can see behavior and urge as separate things, the better. So you can already prepare yourself for this kind of thinking while you think about, okay, why do I want to stop? Is it just so that I don't feel so weird? No. There are many more important reasons to do it, especially relationships, especially to get back the time that this thing is taking from you. So make a list of these values, what you want to achieve by stopping. Okay, today we're going to talk about treatments for OCD. This treatment is based on the theories of Reed Wilson, and it's actually quite standard cognitive therapy. It's more cognitive therapy than exposure therapy. One of the things that I've shown to be very efficient on OCD is exposure and response prevention. That means that you are going to do what you really are afraid of doing, for instance, making your hands dirty and not washing them. Exposure, making them dirty and not washing them. Response prevention. So you're supposed to not do your rituals. This is like a training, very hard training, and it's very effective with a lot of people. But some people might think it's too hard. It's can seem mechanical. It's easy for patients to do it because therapists tell them to do it, etc. So Reed Wilson has a slightly different approach. He also thinks of this as training, but it's a training that you can do anytime. And the point is that it doesn't matter what you're afraid of. In ERP, exposure and response prevention, you often think of specific things that you're afraid of. Touching that specific dirty thing, etc. And if you're uncertain about certain things, you train on that specific thing. However, Dr. Wilson says content is not important. Whenever you become insecure, uncertain, did I really wash my hands well enough? Did I kill that man on the road? That bump I heard with my car, was that me driving over somebody? This uncertainty can come on almost anything. And that's why uncertainty is the point. Well, if you are uncertain, then you have caught an OCD thought, right? So whenever you are uncertain, you're supposed to do the opposite of what you've been used to doing. You're supposed to go towards the danger instead of running away from it. Go towards being uncertain instead of trying to get away the uncertainty. So for instance, if you start thinking, oh, maybe I didn't wash my hands well enough. Okay, what you're supposed to do then is to say, okay, there's my OCD. That was one of my things, washing my hands. Okay, what am I supposed to do now? Okay, I'm supposed to be happy that I got an opportunity to train. So, okay, I'm uncertain. Well, this is good for me. Okay, I'm going to continue to feel this uncertainty. Come on. It's like you in a fight, in a boxing fight, you say, come on, come on. Actually, there's a story about Muhammad Ali who did this in a very famous match called Rumble in the Jungle, where his opponent was very strong, And Ali, he just asked him, come on, come on, come on, by going into the corner and just standing there taking the pounding. Finally, after 7 rounds, the opponent was exhausted and Muhammad Ali did a knockout. So this is a bit of the point with Wilson's way of treating OCD, is that you just stay there. Okay, is that all you got? Can you make me more uncertain? Okay, come on, come on, come on. So be willing to take the hit, so to speak, because in the long run, you're going to exhaust the OCD. The OCD won't be able to have control over you anymore if you don't do what it asks you to do. The OCD will always ask you to feel more certain. Go back and check if you ran over somebody. Go back and check that you didn't really steal anything or didn't really destroy anything. Go back and wash your house again, wash your kid again, wash your hands again. Make sure that you didn't leave any rests of soap or whatever. People have OCD on all kinds of things. People can have OCD about bad thoughts that they thought. For instance, a lot of parents, they are afraid that they're going to stab their children. And the idea there, the treatment would be, okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to stab my children. Okay, that's a thought. That's a thought. Come on, come on, just let it come. Nothing to be ashamed of. It's something that all people have. At least 80% now agree that they've had these kind of thoughts sometimes. The problem is with people who are very conscientious and love their children very much. They will think, okay, that was such a horrible thought. I should never have it again. I have to try to suppress it. I have to not have this thought. Okay, then you're going the opposite way. Then you're trying to become certain. You're trying to take away the OCD thought. And then you're stuck. Just like, imagine, I tell you, don't think about red elephants. Okay, for 10 seconds. Pop, 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 they pop up, the red elephants, all the time. So, just go the other way and say, oh, okay, it's quite okay that these thoughts come. They are just thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. I feel ashamed, I feel uncertain, but I don't have to get them away. They're just thoughts. Anybody can have these thoughts. So in a way, you allow the uncertainty instead of running away from it. So this is the whole point. First of all, the content is not relevant. Secondly, invite in the insecurity. And when you feel anxious because you feel insecurity, say, okay, that's good too. Okay, I'm going to stay in that. Dr. Wilson uses a tally counter where you can give yourself points according to how clever you are in welcoming in the anxiety, welcoming in the uncertainty. So you can give yourself points every time you say, okay, discovered an uncertainty. I'm just gonna let it be there. I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm just gonna feel uncertain. So the point is that you don't really have to expose yourself that much. Anyway, although this will come as a natural part of it because you won't wash your hands again. So in a way you will expose yourself, but you will go for a change of your mind, which is kind of different. You will change your thinking about it. Say, okay, hey, there came one of my many OCD thoughts. I'm gonna let it rip. I'm not gonna do anything about it. Just gonna let it stay there. I'm not going to go and wash those hands. I'm not gonna go back and check if I killed somebody. I'm just gonna live in that uncertainty. And many people, they discover that once they make this decision about just living in the uncertainty for a while at least, then suddenly, inexplicably, it goes down quite quickly. So that's not the point. The point is that you're training, and no pain, no gain when it comes to training. You have to do the work. It's not going to come by itself. Okay? So then you're probably going to become uncertainty. Was this an OCD thought? Or was this a real thought? Okay, just live with it. This is another uncertainty. And can I stay with that? Yeah. Yeah, we like uncertainty in so many ways. Otherwise, we don't want to watch a sports event where we know the outcome in advance, do we? We want to watch a film where we don't know the ending. There's no point watching a horror film for the second or third time. You're not going to get scared, and that's what you want, right? So in many cases we seek out this uncertainty. So do that. Seek out the uncertainty. Hello, just a small video today about hope. Here in Norway we have a treatment for OCD, which many people have in smaller or larger degrees. That means that you try to be sure of everything. Just make sure you've washed your hands enough. Just make sure you've turned off the oven. Just make sure you've pulled out all the electricity contacts. This can go a bit overboard for some people. It's a normal process that becomes stuck, you might say. So what you can do with this, just very simply, is to expose. That means go for insecurity. Do exactly what you are afraid of. That means if you wash your hands too much, wash your hands less. Do things with dirty hands. People sometimes go to extreme lengths. For instance, going without washing their hands at all for 3 days. Sometimes I demonstrate unhealthiness by licking under my shoe. I've done it many times, I've never got any problems, but that impresses people a lot, that you can actually do these things. So do the things that you're afraid of doing on purpose to get rid of it. Okay, that's the essence of ERP, the best scientifically based treatment for OCD. OCD means that you check too much, that you try too much to be sure of everything. For instance, that you've turned off the oven. For instance, that you're not gay. For instance, that, all kinds of things that you can be insecure of. You do all kinds of things to become secure. Stop it. Just say that, okay, as long as I can stay in the insecurity, I'm treating myself. Good morning. Today I will talk about OCD treatment, the fantastic OCD treatment that we're doing here in Oslo now, in Norway. And to do that, I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Most good treatments are extremely simple. The principles are simple. They are difficult to put in practice, but the principles are extremely simple. So the principle of OCD treatment and a lot of anxiety treatment is exposure. Do exactly what you're afraid of doing. And do it as often as you can, for as long as you can, as intensely as you can. Now, how intense the anxiety becomes is not in our control. This is the automatic nervous system that we're dealing with. And how long it lasts is not in our control either. But what's in our control is how often we try. How often you try to get into situations that you're very afraid of. How often you actually try to become anxious. You go into situations that you typically know will make you very anxious, and you stay there. You don't run away. And one important concept in this is so-called leaning into it. That means that you really do it with all your heart. You don't break. You don't put the one foot on the gas pedal and you say, yeah, I'm going to do this, and another foot on the brake pedal and say, oh yeah, but I'm just gonna wash a lot after I've done this exposure training. I'm not really going to really do it because that's too scary. Okay, that's not really going to work. Imagine, it's a true story about a cat that was raised in a hotel, and he had been taught very clearly to not go into houses. It was okay for him to be outside the hotel, but they couldn't have him inside the houses. So he had been severely punished every time he went into a house. So this cat was adopted by some people, actually some psychologists, and they wanted him to get into their house, of course. But he stood at the doorstep and did not dare to cross it. Okay, and they coached him and encouraged him to come in. And finally, in a way, in panic, he just jumped into the house, and then it was okay. But to cross that threshold was very traumatic. But every time he crossed the threshold, he did it the same way. It was very, very apprehensive, and then suddenly jolting in over the threshold. So since he did the same thing, same defensive thing, you might say, every time, he never learned that he could just cross the threshold in a normal way, like a normal cat would do. Every time he had to jump over the threshold in fear. So this is what we want you to avoid, to do the exposure with fear, and you just associate fear to that specific thing, just like the cat. What you should do is that you should do it as normally as possible, like a normal person would do it. Okay, so now to illustrate this, I will play patients, typical patients, since I can't show any real patients. Actually, I've had some of these things myself, so I'm as real a patient as they come, but I'm going to pretend that I have a few more symptoms than most people have. Okay, so when I'm going to be patient, I'm going to sit in another chair and I'll take off my glasses. Okay. So now I'm going to start as a psychologist. Okay, so now tell me a little bit about the kind of problems you have and what you think could be an exposure training for you. And you can also say a little bit about what you think are going to be the problems. Well, one of the things that I'm very afraid of is that I will destroy something for other people. That I will get other people infected with some kind of sickness, or that I will let them get accidents. For instance, I will wash my hands a lot in order to avoid that I contaminate somebody. And if I see a stone, a small stone that's on the road, I think that somebody might hit that small pebble with a bicycle, and I better remove it. Since I know about this now, it's my responsibility if somebody hits that small rock. Okay, that's very good. It seems like you have a good understanding of actually the thing that you have a problem with. It's a normal thing, in a way, you want to take care of people, but it has gone over the top. That's a typical thing with OCD. It's usually a normally good thing, but it has gone over the top. So now, when you're going to train on these things, you have to do training. You can't just do the normal thing. It's like if you're going to become a very good runner, you can't say, well, I think I'm going to become a runner just by walking or maybe slightly running, that like most people do. The normal kind of physical activity, that's going to make me a really good runner. No, if you want to be a good runner, you have to try a lot harder than what most people do. You have to train, you have to really train. Okay, so let's see now what I can do. I can try, I think you mean what I should do is that I should deliberately try to do some of these things that I have tried to avoid in a way that I will know what is really dangerous and what is OCD. Or as you have said, if I'm doubting whether this is typical OCD behavior, I should say that, okay, this is another doubt, and doubt is OCD. So if I'm in doubt, I know it's OCD, and then I should just do it. Okay. So what I can do is that I can, one thing I'm especially afraid of is infecting vulnerable groups like children and old people. So how about if I go to a supermarket and I touch, without washing my hands or anything like that, I can even maybe cough a little bit in my hands, and then I touch diapers and baby food and maybe some baby toys if they have that, so that I in a way risk infecting children, because the parents will touch these things and then they will touch their children, and then they'll get my germs on the children, and then it's my responsibility if this child becomes sick. Yeah, wow, you really got it. That's a really good exercise. Okay, so that was with the touching. Are there some other things that you can do? For instance, countering this thing that you have to remove all kinds of pebbles and small possible dangers that you can see for other people. Well, maybe I could actually spread some danger. I could put out some pebbles on the road. I've heard some people, they actually break a bottle and then they place some broken glass somewhere. Ooh, no, that might be too much, I don't know, but yeah, okay, it's like the hard practice. You know, after all, it's up to people if they are careful enough. I can't be responsible for everything in this world. I can't save everybody. There are a lot of pebbles, there are a lot of glass things out there already. I can't go around and removing all the broken glass in the world. So yeah, maybe I could do that. Okay, but then I'm also very afraid of ovens and electrical things, anything that can catch fire. Iron, curling, like these things you use in your hair to straighten the hair or to curl it. If any of these are on, I have to check that these are off. The oven, dripping taps, because there could be a flood. Okay, so if I understand correctly, I should try to leave the house. They should be on, and then maybe I can turn them all on, and then I try to turn them off as fast as I can, and then I just leave. This is what I need to practice, because I can use hours checking again and again and again that things are off. So how should I do that with the checking of ovens and doors and things like that? Yeah, this is perfect. Anyway, spread all the kinds of problems that you can, including broken glass. Another suggestion is that you could leave some paracetamol tablets around, because you never know, somebody could pick them up and take too many and they will die from it. You never know. Okay, so because this is training, this is more than what is normal. You are allowed to do this just to train, to get over it. You have to go the opposite way of what the OCD tells you. You can look upon the OCD as your enemy. Some people like to even give it a name of the most irritating, obnoxious person that you know. And that could be a way of talking about it. If you give it the name that you really don't like, that will help you to externalize the OCD and see that this is This has become your enemy, and you're not going to give in to this. Okay, so when it comes to the checking of ovens and things like that, which is very typical. Almost all people who have OCD, or a lot of people who have OCD, have this thing with electricity and thing catching fire or floods or things like that. So good idea that you turn everything on very quickly, and then without looking back, without checking again, without turning around, you just quickly turn them off, and then you leave the house. You don't go back. Same thing with checking the door. You just lock it and then you go. Okay. So even if this seems hard, if it seems too hard, okay, you can do slightly gradual, but it's better to just go for it at once if you're able to. A lot of people are able to when they are on these training things that we do. They get so inspired, they see other people doing the same thing, so they go for it at once. What you can do in addition is that you distract yourself while you turn off the things. And when you get the doubt, you say, yes, okay, so good. This is exactly what I want to have. I want to have the doubt. This is like when the athlete feels the burning in the muscle, the burning in the chest, then they know that they've really been training, they've really been practicing. I think I get it now. So what you're saying is that I should get the anxiety. I shouldn't be afraid of the anxiety. That's actually, like you say, it's the athlete that feels it in the muscles. Okay, so I should go for anxiety. I should go for the insecurity. I should actually make myself more insecure. Yes, I think you really got it now. I think you understand it. Okay, you should go for the insecurity. Any kind of exercise that makes you really insecure, including insecurity about is this OCD or not, perfect. Okay, so think about that you're the athlete. You've got the world's best coach that has told you that you should do these kind of exercises that make you really anxious. And no pain, no gain. If you don't feel anxious, it doesn't really hit you. So then you should do something else that really would get your anxiety up. So it's like training. It's like training to tolerate the insecurity, and through that you have to get up the anxiety in this training period. And then after that, it's going to be a lot easier. You're going to be able to live like a normal person. But in the training period now, you have to really go for it. Do it more, as frequently as you can, and your goal is to get up your pulse, to feel it in your legs, so to speak, to get that insecurity and anxiety. Okay, today I'm going to talk a little bit more about OCD. What I'm going to do today is to read through gold standard about OCD treatment, which is called the Y-Box, the Yale Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale Symptom Checklist. I find this very interesting myself, because a lot of people can have some OCD thoughts without having full-blown OCD. Just knowing that these are the kind of thoughts that you can get can be very reassuring. That a lot of people have these thoughts and these actions, but that not so many people are bothered to the extent that they cannot work. Okay, so the first is obsessions, and a very interesting category of obsessions called aggressive obsessions. First one is, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself. For instance, you can be afraid to eat with a knife and a fork, afraid of using sharp things, and afraid of going too close to windows because you think that you could break them and hurt yourself. And then another one, which is maybe bigger, is afraid of hurting other people. The typical thing is that you're afraid you're going to poison your baby or other people's food, afraid of hurting babies, throwing babies out in the street, stabbing your own children. Especially these things, they go about people that you really love. For instance, if you just got a baby, it's your dearest thing, but you think that I might really kill this baby or choke it or things like that. It doesn't happen. these people who are afraid of this are not the people who do these kind of things. So you don't have to be afraid of it. It could also be afraid of pushing people in front of a train. It could be afraid of hurting others' feelings, and then you have to go through your thoughts all the time. It can be afraid that you have that you run over somebody when you were out driving. These kind of things. You're afraid that you're going to be responsible for a catastrophe, that you're going to make the whole village burn down or your whole apartment complex burn down, for instance. You're afraid of giving advice because you can give very bad advice, for instance. Okay. A third one is I have violent or scary images in my mind. That you can see images of people mutilated, decapitated, chop their heads off, people without hands and feet, and all kinds of grotesque images that can come up in our minds. That's something that at least half of the population have. Now they say 80% have these things, but it's only the people who are very afraid of this. I think this is so horrible, they try to suppress them, and then they come up. Okay, I'm afraid that I'm going to say profanities, say bad things, and really hurt people. For instance, it could be that if you go to church, you're afraid that you're going to scream out some very bad thing about God or the devil or something like that. Afraid of doing other embarrassing things. The list is almost limitless. What people can be afraid of that they will do against their own will. That's the very typical OCD. That I might do this against everything that is me. Then typical thing, afraid of doing unwanted things on sudden impulses. For instance, that you should drive your car into a tree, or that you should jump off a cliff, or these things. Doing something on an impulse. You're afraid that you might actually do that. Then we have another one which is interesting. I always think these are interesting because they are so special for people who are actually very conscientious. And this could be afraid that you might steal things by mistake. That suddenly you've put something in your bag and you come out of the shop and you see, oh, I really stole that. And then, as a very typical one, is that you're afraid you're going to cause an accident or something bad to happen because you're not careful enough. For instance, if you're not careful enough with electrical contacts or ovens or stove or things like that. Yeah, or afraid that you're going to be responsible for something terrible happening. You see that these things they go on, and this is the typical thing. If you're afraid that you're going to get to break into the house if you don't lock well enough, if you don't check the lock, the fire, because of electrical contacts and things like that. Then we come over to the second obsessive category, and this is obsessions about contamination, sickness. First one has to do with bodily fluids, that you're afraid of blood, spit, anything that could give some kind of sickness, especially AIDS, things like that. Then it can be just being afraid of general dirt or bacteria that are on door handles, for instance. That's one of the most typical is dirt on door handles. Okay, then we have another category, people who are very afraid of anything chemical in the environment. For instance, asbestos, these things that you have in the walls as isolation. It could be dishwashing fluids. It can be pesticides in fields and things like that. Then we have just general cleaning agents in the house. That's a very typical one. Then you can be very afraid of animals, but in the sense that the animals can contaminate you with something. Then we have another category where things are just, you can't stand that things are sticky. But it could also be that because they're sticky, they might contain extra much bacteria. And then, that you can be sick by touching somebody who is sick. Very afraid of that. And then the last one, which can be a bit tricky, because it seems so that you're such a good person, you're afraid of contaminating other people. But this can very easily become an obsession. You can't go out if you're a little bit sick. You can't go out of your house because you could pull with you some of the bad bacteria that you have in your house, and then some weak person could get it, etc., etc. So one very typical thing is that you're afraid of contaminating others. Okay, so that's enough for now. These were just the obsessions. Then on the next video, we're going to take sexual obsessions, hoarding obsessions, and religious obsessions. And finally, symmetry and being exact. And we have up to 35 things here, so we just covered the first 20 here. Okay, welcome back to another video about OCD. OCD, so-called Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, is something that afflicts 2 to 3% of the population, quite a lot of people. But it can also afflict a lot more people on a lower level and make their lives relatively hard. And of course, these 2 to 3% of the population, they also have family members who can be really affected by this. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Right now, I want to do the gold standard of OCD treatment is so-called Y-box, Yale Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale. And they have made a very good list over the symptoms that can be classified as obsessive compulsive disorder. Actually, the name obsessive compulsive disorder should probably be changed. It's much easier to think of it as doubt. You doubt if you have turned off the oven, you doubt if your hands are clean enough, and over responsibility. You feel that everything is your responsibility. You doubt whether you have done something wrong, and then you think it's your responsibility to do something about it. It's your responsibility to check almost all the electrical contacts in your house, all of them actually, because you think that only one missing and it will be my fault if the whole apartment complex burns down. If you have bad thoughts, thoughts about harming, then you think, I might do it. I've thought about it, but I might really do it. Okay, so it's the doubt. And also responsibility, because you feel that I'm responsible to do something about this. I've had a really bad thought about stabbing my kids with a knife, which is a typical OCD thought. And I have the responsibility to do something about it. So we throw out all the knives, and I'm never going to be with my kids again because I might strangle them too. Okay, might seem like I'm making fun of this. Is absolutely not funny at all, but sometimes humor helps in the treatment. And I know because I've had these knife grotesque thoughts myself. And what made me get over it was that I read a book where it said 51% of the population admit to these kind of thoughts if they can respond anonymously. And then I said, okay, that must mean that a lot of people have these thoughts, but a lot of people, they just let them pass and say, that was a weird thought, just like a weird dream. I don't have to concern myself about that. It's just a thought that popped into my head. Doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. But usually people who suffer from OCD or doubt and responsibility syndrome, as I would call it, they're very responsible. They are very good people in most cases. They're very caring. They don't want to be responsible for anybody's problem at all. So, doubt and responsibility disorder. Okay, I've made a video where I started on these typical things that people can have, but I will start again because I will show what can you do to get rid of it. And this is in the tradition of exposure training. And I put weight on the word training because it is through practical, real-life training that you can actually get better. You can't talk yourself to this. There is no talking cure for OCD. That's why people were very discouraged only 20 years ago. Typical therapists who did talking therapy, there's nothing we can do with these people. They just don't get it. They just don't get that they don't have to check all their contacts 50 times before they go to bed. They don't get it. But it is when they train again and again on taking the risk of going to bed even if you're not 100% sure that everything is out. So it is training. You have to do it yourself. No talking is going to cure this. No therapist is going to cure it for you. You can only do it yourself. So I will take 5 of the first ones now and try to suggest what you can do about it. First one is aggressive, obsessive thoughts. I would say just aggressive thoughts. And the first one is, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself. Then people can be afraid of eating with knives and forks, afraid of using sharp objects, afraid to go near windows, and also would be very afraid of going on high places where you could actually jump, or being in the subway where you could jump in front of the train, or driving a car where you could just turn a little bit on the steering wheel and you would run into that big lorry and you would be dead. You might do it. You might just do it. Okay. If you're in any of these categories that you are worried that suddenly on an impulse you might hurt yourself, it's typical OCD. And what would be the antidote? Okay. Let's take the one with knives. Okay, you're afraid you're going to hurt yourself with a knife, that you're suddenly just going to cut off your finger or something like that. Very classical OCD. And I must say, I have had thoughts in that category too, but these, for some reason, I've been able to say, that's too weird. That's probably something everybody has. And now we know that everybody has it. So, one very interesting therapist, a big therapist physically, Marty Franklin, had a seminar here in Norway, and he said, well, before we thought that it wasn't that common, but then we've asked more and more people, and now 80% say that they have these weird thoughts. Like he himself had a thought of maybe his the head of his mother-in-law could be chopped off by a tractor that just won't buy them. Okay, so 80% have these thoughts, and he said the rest are lying. Probably. It's probably a totally normal human phenomenon that all people can have very grotesque thoughts that pop into their mind. Okay, so what can you do? If you're afraid of knives, okay, the typical thing would be to have a lot of knives around in the kitchen and just stay in the uncertainty, the anxiety that comes when you do that. If you're afraid of cutting yourself with glass, okay, break a bottle and have it lying around the kitchen for days. Then you can see that, okay, after a while you'd be rid of it. But the point is that you stay in this uncertainty about whether you're going to hurt yourself with these things. You stay in it. You let it rip, so to speak. The point is to get as much anxiety as you can and just realize that anxiety is absolutely not dangerous. Actually, I had an anxiety patient once who was very surprised. She was afraid of everything with her body, that her heart was going to stop. And so she went to a doctor and pestered him until she got one of these tests where she rode a bicycle and they measured the gases she was breathing out and heart rate and everything. And she passed it with flying colors, and the doctor was very impressed. He said, but why? I don't understand. You say that you are so handicapped by your anxiety, but you are in excellent physical health. Now I know, said the doctor. Now I know. Why didn't I think about that? You say you have a few anxiety attacks per day. Well, that would explain it. Your heart and lungs get the training every day. That's what it is. So, anxiety is actually not dangerous. The more, the better. And you get the exercise, the free exercise. Don't worry about it. Then you don't have to exercise today if you do the anxiety trip. So put these glasses around. If you're afraid of forks and knives, leave them around. Certainly do not start eating with plastic forks. Eat with the sharpest forks and sharpest knives. You can have these beef knives, very sharp. Okay. What else? For instance, if you're afraid that you're going to jump in front of the subway, I would say you, on your own initiative, has to stand very close to the subway and go to the subway as often as you can and stand closer and closer to the subway track. Okay, just to see that, hey, you're not going to do it. A very good OCD therapist who had thousands of patients said it doesn't happen. But now this is reassurance. Actually, I should try to make you more insecure so you could stay in the insecurity, but he says you can say this to the patients once. I will say this only once. I've never had any patient who have acted on these things. Out of probably 25,000 patients, nobody has acted on this. And then he says, to not take away the training effect of the insecurity and anxiety, but you might be the first. Okay, so the point is to not reassure people too much. They have to experience that this is a real anxiety. They stood in it and it passed. Okay, if you're afraid of driving into trailers, into big trucks, into other cars, you should drive a lot. You should drive a lot and be happy if the insecurity comes. And you say, this is training. This is exactly what I need to train. Ah, great, now it's coming. So you reframe the whole thing. Okay, but I'll stop this now and then continue on the next because this becomes a bit long. Good morning. I would like to make a little video of an article I have made on the website called madinamerica.com. It is about how our thoughts can be helpful. It's an article about helpful and hopeful thoughts. And the basic idea is that good psychotherapy research shows that if we change our way of thinking, we can change our way of feeling. We can take away a lot of psychological problems. So the first good thought that has helped me a lot through the years is that there are no psychiatric illnesses, really. What we call mental illness, what I like to call psychological problems, or even better, psychological challenges, is these are extreme varieties of normal behavior. And extreme not necessarily in a negative sense, but extreme in also can be extremely positive. So that, for instance, a person who washes their hands a lot, it's actually good hygienic behavior, but it can go a bit over the top and become OCD. But basically, it's a person who wants to be conscientious, who is conscientious, who wants to not infect other people, etc. And then it can go a bit over the top. And of course, then there are therapies that can make it go down in the normal range again. A person who is depressed is a person who thinks more about negative things than most people. A person who's anxious is a person who thinks more about what could go wrong. So all of these things, because they are just part of the normal way of reacting, it's just that it's a bit extreme. That means that with therapy we can take them down in the normal range. And it's actually quite normal to be anxious approximately 50 minutes per day. And it's quite normal to have bad days. One very simple treatment approach that has helped me and all of my patients is from Martin Seligman's research on positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. And it's very easy. Write down 3 good things every day. 3 good things that have happened every day. and you can elaborate. You can write, for instance, my grandchild came and played with me today. I'm so happy that I have a grandchild and that we can have such a good relationship, and I must have been a good father and a good grandfather because both my son and my grandchild are so okay. So a positive event, and then put an interpretation on it that can be very beneficial. So this was depression, but even more serious things, what is called so-called serious mental illness, like mania and psychosis, may actually, or I think it is actually, just an extreme variety of normal behavior. It is something that we can all have sometimes. We can all have very strongly valued ideas that we can't really justify, and we can really go for them in a way that other people would think is totally unrealistic. The theory is that 100,000 years ago there was a mutation in the human genome that created people who were extra creative, who had a lot of ideas and had a lot of energy behind their ideas, and that this worked great. It probably was what made us develop as a species, made us into human society, so to speak. And this was not a problem at all until we started to eat less fish. Omega-3 fish oil seems to be essential for keeping this process just creative, and that it doesn't go a bit over the top and becomes what many would call psychotic ideas. Research has shown that if you give omega-3 to people who are at risk for so-called schizophrenia or psychosis, a lot less will develop problems. They might be creative and a bit odd, but it doesn't reach the level where they need care, where they cannot really take care of themselves. So in a group that had high risk for psychosis, so-called psychosis, 28% developed it if they didn't take the fish oil, and those who had taken fish oil only for 3 months, 1 year earlier, only 7%, only 4% developed psychosis. So this is a fantastic result, and it supports the idea that, okay, it is creativity, ingenuity, fantasy, etc., but it needs fish oil to keep it within a good range, we might say. A second very good thought that I've had for a while, and that has helped me personally in many ways, is about life and death. I used to read everything I could get my hands on near-death experience, because I said to myself, it is very important that we know what happens after death. Why shouldn't we know? Why should we leave that to chance? It's the only thing that we're sure is going to happen to all of us. We're all going to die. So, and we all have family members who will die. So knowing what happens before, knowing what happens after death is very important. And I said, okay, you have to ask those who have been to the country to tell what the country is like. You can't ask somebody who says, no, this country doesn't exist, and no, we can't know anything about it. Anyway, the atheists. Atheism is also a belief. So don't ask people who haven't been there, ask those who have been there. Okay, and when you ask people who have been clinically dead, and some of them have been dead for quite long periods, like an hour. If you're cooled down through drowning in very cold water, you can wake up without brain damage even after 1 hour. And these people have profound experiences, and they all say, it's great. It is so great, you get to meet your family, and like Raymond Moody said, a researcher, Dr. Raymond Moody, heaven is, or the afterlife, is filled with love and knowledge. And I like that. Love is very good, but without knowledge, I would think it would be a bit boring. So that's near-death experience. And the conclusion of the near-death experience is that there is a life after this life. There is a life after we have died, and that it's a very good one. It's very good and harmonious, and we get to meet the people we love, and we also get to keep an eye on the people we love here on earth while we are there. Okay, that's a comfort for a lot of people who are afraid of dying away from their children. Second part of this thought about life after death came when I read a book about a cognitive therapist, atheist, Michael Newton. He used to do a hypnosis for pain control as part of the cognitive therapy, and then he asked, go back to the time when this pain started. And in many cases, they went back to a previous death experience in a previous life. One case that is easy to remember is a woman who was standing on a cliff in the previous life and was prodded in the back by a spear until it hurt so much that she jumped to her death. And she got the classical near-death experience, seeing her body from above, going into the light, etc. Newton, since he was an atheist, he says, yeah, this is just popular culture. They've read about it, they've seen films about it. Of course, they will give you some kind of fantasy like that. But he was also very curious, so he wanted to know what happens. In a way, how does the fantasy go on? Because there is not that much about like 3 or 4 or 5 days after death. Because this is not in the near-death experience. So he started asking them, and he was very astonished that he found that people had very similar experiences. And he summed it up as follows. 1, there is life after death. 2, it's very good, we get to meet the family members. 3, when we come to Earth, it's for a reason. It's because we want to develop. So people who have had just a few lives, who are beginners, they get usually very easy lives. Good economy, good relationships, no abuse, easy life. Whereas those who are old souls, who might have hundreds of lives behind them, they choose the really, really difficult lives. Psychological problems of all kinds, abuse, poverty, sickness, you name it. All the problems we can have. So, this is the reason why good people have so many problems, according to Newton. And it all makes sense if this is the case. And I don't say this is the absolute truth, but Newton hypnotized 7,000 people before he dared to publish about this. So he has a pretty good database. And if it is so that we actually get to choose, he says that we get to choose between several scenarios, and we pick the scenario that best fits with what we want to develop in the coming life. If we really get to choose like this, there's no problem with God not being loving, because many people think there can't be a loving God since there's so much evil in the world. But if we actually choose our own challenges, it's not a problem. And especially since between each challenging life, we come back to complete harmony with the people we love in the life between lives. So things happen for a purpose. According to Newton, we have chosen why we have the problems we have today. We want to develop. We want to see these things as challenges, really. So, these thoughts, among many positive thoughts which I will touch on later, can have very profound effects on us. Me, it had a very profound effect knowing about near-death experience. When my grandmother died, I was very close to her and thought I was going to really, really go through all the stages of grief. But I didn't. Nothing. No grief. Because I was so convinced, and I still am, that her soul lives on, that she can probably even see me, and that I will meet her again one day when I die. I might even meet her in a dream. I have a strong after-death communication, as it's called, something that 1 of 8 people have with people that they have loved. They get some kind of message from beyond that the person actually lives on. One famous case was about a grandfather who came back and told his granddaughter where he had hidden all his money. Nobody knew. They knew he had money, but they had no idea where it was hidden. She looked there and found it. There are a lot of stories like this, a lot of veridical, it's called, after-death experiences, no, after-death communications, ADC, or near-death experiences, NDE. And I would like to recommend a site, if you're interested in these things, called near-death.com. Very good site. Okay, so keep these good thoughts. There is a purpose to everything we live on. And psychological problems are just on a continuum. They're just a little bit extreme varieties of what is so-called normal. Can be very good, can also be very painful, but we can always get back to the normal state through therapy and good life experiences. Okay, so today we do the video outside. Today I'm going to talk about sleep. What we can do to sleep. Sleep is extremely important in all psychological disorders. If you don't get to sleep, you get big problems. So what can we do to sleep? There are actually a lot of good advice, but what I'm going to give today is a little bit out of the ordinary. It's kind of special, and it works really great. The first advice is extremely simple. It comes from Deepak Chopra, neurologist from America, neurologist, psychiatrist, and he says the best way to sleep is to just lie completely still and not move at all with your eyes closed. If you do that, it's almost as good as natural sleep. So you just have to lie there for, let's say, half an hour longer if you want to have a full night's sleep. If you can just lie still and close your eyes. And this is the big problem for people who have sleeping problems, is that, oh, I have to sleep, if not something bad is going to happen. So just lie completely still and close your eyes. Okay? Then you don't have to worry about it. Anybody can do that. The problem is it's a little bit hard to lie still for a very long time. So what you have to do then is when you're going to move, you move very slowly. You turn very slowly. Okay? So lie completely still with your eyes closed as long as you can. Usually people can lie still for around 20 minutes, and then you turn very slowly and continue with your eyes closed. Don't open your eyes when you're turning, and turn very slowly. So then you don't have to worry about sleeping. Okay, I've said it a lot of times now. Okay, the second thing is EFT. I'll make another video about EFT. Actually, I can do it out here in the garden. But the Eft points are points in the face and on your body that create relaxation. And it would be great if you can attach relaxation to the thoughts that normally bother you when you can't sleep. For instance, it could be OCD thoughts, it could be general anxiety thoughts, fear of sickness, fear for the future, depressive thoughts, etc. You just say these thoughts internally while you imagine that you tap on the Eft points. That's going to be quite difficult, so it will keep your attention busy, so you won't be able to think of your other things. For instance, it could be, I'm so afraid I won't be able to sleep because I'm going to be too tired tomorrow. I'm so afraid I won't be able to sleep because I'm going to be too tired tomorrow. Or afraid I'm going to go crazy if I don't sleep now. I'm afraid I'm going to go crazy if I don't sleep now. I'm afraid I'm going to go crazy if I don't sleep now. So what you do is that you just think that you tap on these points while you're repeating it. So I'm going to give you the whole sequence in another video. So lie completely still, and in order to think of something more positive than your problems, you can, you're going to restate your problem, but that's only so that you will attach this thought to the relaxation you get from the EFT. So next time you think of something that worries you, it's automatically going to kick in the relaxation from the EFT. Okay, good luck. So, since we have been talking about sleep, I'll give you one advice about nightmares. And a lot of people have nightmares and they can be very bothered by them, especially repetitive nightmares. So, what you can do with nightmares is extremely simple, and it has worked every time I've tried it. You imagine while you're awake that you have the nightmare, but you do something so that the action changes so that you get a good outcome for you. Okay, my first case with this was a woman who had a nightmare of being inside a PlayStation game. And what she did was that she felt that there were monsters coming behind her, and they finally ate her. And then she went up a level and there were more monsters. So I told her, okay, well, in PlayStation games, sometimes you find guns, laser guns, and then you can shoot monsters with that. So when you practice on this, imagine that you find the laser gun and then you turn around and shoot the monsters. She followed my instructions, and the nightmare was gone from night one. And then at the end of the treatment, I asked her, but what was actually your new dream? Well, I was running in the PlayStation game, and then you had a laser gun and you shot all the monsters for me. Okay, very touching story. But it helped her. So just make a new story where you win, so to speak, where everything goes well. You start flying instead of falling off the cliff, for instance. Anything is possible. And then you practice this new version, and voila, the nightmare is gone. Okay, I'm just going to present a quick overview of the Eft Points. This you can use for anything that you're afraid of. You just have to say what you're afraid of. For instance, afraid of small rooms, while you tap on the points, and it's these points. And I'll use the phrase afraid of small rooms just as an example. Afraid of small rooms, 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 collarbone, afraid of small rooms, under the arm, afraid of small rooms. And then you can do with the fingers like this. Afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms. Each finger is afraid of small rooms, afraid of smaller rooms. And then you're going to tap on the back of your hand. It becomes difficult when I have to hold this thing here. Okay, we'll try it anyway. It's between the ring finger and the little finger. Let's see now. Do like this. Okay, I'm going to tap here while you close your eyes, open your eyes, look down to the right, look down to the left, roll your eyes clockwise, roll your eyes counterclockwise, hum for 5 seconds, na 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 na, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then hum for 5 seconds, na 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 na, and then it's the whole sequence again. Afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms, small rooms, afraid of small rooms, under the arm, afraid of small rooms, finger, afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms, afraid of small rooms. And then you can do the back of your hand, oops, afraid of small rooms too. This one you can also do before you start. You do, you know, this was difficult. Even if I'm afraid of small rooms, I accept myself completely. Even if I'm afraid of small rooms, I accept myself completely. Even if I'm afraid of small rooms, I accept myself completely. So that was a quick overview, a little bit complicated with the selfie stick, but that's alright.